Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. And thank you for your service to our country under some pretty difficult circumstances. And we're certainly grateful. I'm certainly grateful. The people of the state that I represent, Colorado, are grateful to the 38,000 members of the FBI team, as you have articulated, that are working every day to keep the American people safe and to keep the people of my state and my community safe. So we're grateful for you being here. This committee obviously has a legitimate role in terms of conducting oversight. Generally, that oversight has extended to the policy areas, the areas of law enforcement that, of course, you are responsible for. Unfortunately, much of the conversation today, and it's disappointing, I think, for those Americans who have been watching, has not been focused on those legitimate areas of inquiry, but instead conspiracy theories and the like. Obviously, as you have been given an opportunity to respond to some of the attacks that have been made against the law enforcement agency that you direct, and the dangerous calls, or at least in my view, the dangerous calls that have been made by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle in terms of defunding federal law enforcement, which is deeply dangerous, and you've articulated the many reasons why. I'd like to focus in on two areas that are important to my constituents in Colorado and that I believe are relevant to the work that you do, and that is the fentanyl epidemic and gun violence prevention. With respect to the latter, you may recall you testified in front of the committee previously. I had an opportunity to ask you about an incident that occurred back in 2020 in my state in Colorado. In 2021, the GAO issued a report in response to this particular incident. Just by way of background, a gun dealer in Colorado transferred a firearm to an 18-year-old resident of Florida without first verifying the purchaser's age eligibility in her state of residence. The gun buyer then threatened to commit a school shooting akin to the mass tragedy that occurred at Columbine High, causing the lockdown and closure of multiple schools in my district back in Colorado. The report recommended, the GAO report, that the FBI strengthen its system for the sale of firearms to out-of-state purchasers. Specifically, it recommended that the FBI update the NICS system to verify the age requirements of an out-of-state firearm purchaser in both the purchaser's state of residence and the state of sale to ensure basic age eligibility. And we've introduced legislation that I believe the Department of Justice is aware of to make that requirement statutory. Wonder if you could expound a bit on whether I'm sure you're aware of the report, whether the FBI has implemented the recommendation that the GAO has made, and if not, the FBI's plans to do so.
Well, I think the specific legislation that would require that is something, as you said, that I think the department is studying, and so I can't weigh in on a specific legislative proposal. When it comes to the specific issue of 18 to 20-year-olds in particular and gun purchases, that is, of course, the subject of the bipartisan Safer Communities Act that was passed. And there are a number of significant checks that now occur. We started implementing that last October, fully implemented it starting in January. And that provides for enhanced checks for that critical population, the 18 to 20-year-old range, juvenile criminal records, mental health records for that population, and contact, in some ways, most importantly, contact with local law enforcement in that person's community. And I've actually been out to NICS, met with and sat with the operators who process those checks. So I've seen kind of firsthand how it works and the important work it represents. And I think if you were to talk, I'm talking to chiefs and sheriffs all over this country every week, and you will hear from most of them, if you talk to them for very long, you will hear about their concern and our concern about juveniles and violence. Almost guarantee you within the first 10 minutes of any conversation. It's a real problem in this country.
Well, I thank you for your answer, and I think it underscores the importance of the NICS program, and would look forward to perhaps following up with your team on this particular administrative issue of trying to just make sure that the database is working efficiently. Limited time left, but I just want to give you an opportunity. I know we've talked a bit about the fentanyl epidemic devastating communities across the country, certainly in Colorado. It's one of the reasons why we created a fentanyl prevention caucus here in the Congress. It's bipartisan. Representative Issa is one of our co-chairs. I wonder if you just might be able to, for those Americans who are watching, kind of provide us with your sense of some of the trends, the most dangerous and disturbing trends that you think the American people and policymakers should be aware of.
Well, I will say there are a whole bunch of trends, but in the limited time, but because of the importance of this topic, I'll hit a couple. One is, and we were just discussing this recently internally, we are finding over the course of the last year that, maybe even a little less than a year, that almost every gang takedown we have now, and we're doing them all over the country all the time, almost every single one now seems to involve as well a seizure of fentanyl. And we've been doing gang takedowns since Congresswoman Lee was a prosecutor as well. And so that's not new, but what is new is that over and over and over again, it seems consistently we're finding fentanyl in these, again, these are violent crime takedowns. The second phenomenon, which is deeply disturbing, and I know the DEA administrator is very concerned about as well, is that we're seeing more and more adulteration or lacing of fentanyl into all sorts of different kinds of prescription drugs that lots of Americans take all the time. And if you think about the phenomenon of the youth of this country, which is itself a problem of getting prescription drugs from their friends or their friends' parents or whatever it happens to be, they may not know that there's potentially a lethal dose of fentanyl in some prescription drug that they're taking. So it just underscores the importance of only getting your prescriptions from an appropriate medical provider.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Is a Southern